The next item tonight is the Humane Society report. That'll be introduced by David Duke. We have Lori Freeman, Executive Director of the and the Humane Society Friends of the Dog Park representatives. I see a couple of them here tonight as well. This was presented at one of our council committee meetings, and I'd requested that it come before the City Council, in part because we've seen a glimpse, at least, of the Parks and Recreation Draft Master Plan that's coming up, and I see that there was a recommendation by the Parks and Rec Commission to consider, for the policymakers here to consider either an expanded dog park or an additional dog park, and that's kind of a recurring topic, and I know that the Humane Society of the Palouse has been busting at the seams from time to time and wondering how to pay the heating bills. So we want to know if there are any budgetary implications tonight. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's, like you say, broken down into three parts. I'll give some background and some operational aspects from the police department, and then invite the executive director to come up after me to talk about the Humane Society itself. But just a short introduction. It's located at 2019 White Avenue, between the Moscow School District Bus Garage and Camas Village. It occupies 1.43 acres, and currently over 1 acre of that is the dog park itself. The building itself is about 18.5 years old, completed in spring of 1995. It's 3,450 square feet, and it's dedicated to animal and housing and care. And that includes more than just dogs and cats, but that's what I'll be mostly focusing on tonight, because that's the majority of the care that's provided there. Within the cats, there are 61 housing pens in the facility itself, around the office, mostly to the east of the office and south behind it. And when the cats are not in their pens, they have a couple of cat rooms to enjoy and recreate, along with some outdoor enclosures that are accessible from inside, so they can go in and out at their leisure. On the dog side of it, there are 20 kennels inside the facility, and then on the outside, on the south side of the building, there are 12, each individually fenced, and as you can see here, each has a nice housing addition added for the dog's convenience. On the west side of the facility is a meet and greet, so when potential adoptees come in for their dogs, they can go out and introduce themselves and see if they'll make a nice match before they're adopted out. Within the city side, there are budgetary impacts to the city taken out of the Moscow Police Department's funds, animal control side. We provide a stipend each year for the operational cost to the Humane Society of the Palouse. As you can see, it usually increases based on the COLA each year. On top of that, we take care of the utilities. Because it is a city facility, we pay for the utilities and provide one dumpster for sanitation. And then there is a budget line for maintenance to repair the facility and provide operational maintenance when things need to be fixed. So overall, between $50,000 and $55,000 a year for the last 5 years have gone into supporting the facility. There are some support that's provided through revenues, impound fees when dogs are impounded, and then their owners pick them up. We do receive a fee on that, along with providing dog license to those that have dogs within the city are required to license them, and it is an annual license. And then each year, the Latah County provides us, because of their deputies, to also use the facilities to impound and bring their animals they impound in, mostly dogs. They provide us a $500 annual revenue. As you can see, it averages between $75,000 and $8,000. But overall, we get between 13% and 14% of our funds back through general fund support. The activities we have, starting with the cats, you can see between 300 and a little over 400 cats each year are brought into the shelter, mostly by owners who want to give the cats up for adoption. And then many cats, while in there, have litters of kittens that need to be taken care of. All of the adoptions are then done, which leaves around an average of 70 to 80 cats in there each month. very few return to owners, but every once in a while a cat will be picked up and an owner will reclaim their cat when they bring it in. And then some cats are euthanized, mostly because of their health, but there are all times that if a cat is deemed too vicious or cannot be rehabilitated, it is euthanized. And then down below is just a bar graph to show a timeline a little bit better than the numbers on where you can see corresponding is what's brought in is also the amount of adoptions. They're pretty linear in that fact.
Chief, I'm very surprised to see the number of died in kennel relative to the total number of cats. Can you elaborate on that? What?
They are the older cats are not adopted out by the community. They're just deemed not wanting to be brought into a home, and a lot of them do die in the kennel because of
Okay,
age.
just
And I think
an aging issue. Okay.
yeah, it's an aging issue. Mostly Lori can address to that. There's no other things that I can think of except for the age of the cats.
Okay, thank you.
On the dogs, you can see a little higher number brought in, between 400 and 500 each year. 60 to 70% of those are returned to owners, so you can see that a lot of them are dog at large and get out, and they are taken into the shelter until the owner comes and picks them up, and those that aren't returned to the owners are adopted out. But there are also dogs that are euthanized for the same reason as the cats, and then there are fewer dogs that die in the kennel because of the adoption out. And then on average, it's between 17 to 20 dogs in there usually a year. 2012 was aberration in the year where there was 32 left in December. But on average, there's about 20 to 25 in there at any time. And I'll invite Lori up at this time, talk about the Humane Society of the Palouse and their mission, and she has some other information to share with you.
Hi, my name is Lori Freeman, and I'm the director of the Humane Society of the Palouse. A little bit about my history with the shelter. I started working there in 1997 when I was getting my undergrad at the U of I. I did leave for a brief time and taught in southern Idaho and then returned to Moscow to get a master's degree. And when I finished my degree, they offered me the position as the director at the shelter, and I've been in that position for 13 years. Quickly, just to clarify the died in kennel part, for the dogs is parvo. We do treat for parvo as much as possible, but unfortunately, it's a very high death rate disease, and sometimes puppies succumb to it during the night when we're not there. And then for the cats, it's actually kittens that come in without mothers. And as much as we try, unfortunately, us bottle feeding them is not as good as having a mom. And so all of those kittens are kittens that we are attempting to bottle feed and try to save their lives. And also, unfortunately, sometimes they come in just too sick, and we try, but we are unsuccessful. So just to clarify that number for you.
Would you discuss parvo? Parvo?
Parvo.
The dog?
It's a canine virus, and it attacks basically what they usually die of is dehydration, because it causes diarrhea and vomiting. And it was discovered in 1977. There are vaccines against it, which we do that with all the animals at the shelter. But if they're exposed to it, it can take incubation period of 14 days before they show the symptoms. So a lot of times what happens is they're exposed to it before they come into the facility. We vaccinate them as soon as they come in, but unfortunately then they still break with it. And all of our staff is trained well enough and has been with the facility long enough to know how to treat for that. But it is a hard-going process, and unfortunately about 90% of puppies that get parvo do not survive.
Thank you.
Yep. So the shelter currently has 4 full-time employees, and we are responsible for the day-to-day care of all the animals in the facility. So far this year, we've taken in 275 cats and kittens and 307 dogs and puppies. We've had 3 rabbits, 2 ducks, and 1 pig come through the facility. So we've get quite the variation. It's not always just cats and dogs. We usually have about 50 volunteers a day that are variable volunteers, and what I mean by that is there are programs through the University of Idaho and WSU that offer volunteer programs for their students to come into the facility and just socialize with the animals, walk the dogs, pet the cats, give baths, and we have started limiting that to 50 spaces a day because we became so overwhelmed with volunteers at the facility, we actually had adopters leaving because there was so many people in the shelter. So we've limited the amount of people that can come each day so we can better manage the time that they're there and also be able to still help the people who are interested in adopting. Now, those volunteers don't include our permanent volunteers, and those are people in the community that live here year-round that come in, and we average about 5 to 10 of those a day. There are several projects that the Humane Society of the Palouse does. We just don't do the stuff in the shelter. We try to get out there in the community as much as possible. We did a daytime distraction at the University of Idaho this year, which we took animals up to the campus during midterms, and we were in one of the side rooms in the commons, and kids could come in and play with the cats and the dogs, and it was very successful. Lots of kids that came in and played, and it was just a different atmosphere for us to take the animals into, and they had a good time, we had a good time. We've been the recipient of several Eagle Scout projects, one of which was just recently finished, a double-story, 2-decker porch dog house for one of the outside fenced-in areas. It is very lovely. We're recipients for group projects for nonprofit classes and advertising classes. They like to choose us to try to boost our public knowledge of the shelter, different programs we offer, so that's wonderful. We've been involved with Creatures of the Night at PCEI. We do the Emergency Preparedness Fair. We did the nonprofit fair that was last week. 4-H group presentations, we go and do those for different groups throughout not only Moscow but the county as well, along with elementary school presentations. We do a program called Vandal Dog of the Game where we take a animal, specifically a dog, that is available for adoption at the shelter. We go to the volleyball games and both men's and women's basketball, and we take them out on the court during a timeout and let people see them, and then we hang out at the game and let people interact with the dogs so they can get an idea of what an animal is like. And it's kind of nice because a lot of times people, if they don't necessarily take the dog that's at the game, it gets them the idea to come into the shelter and see another animal that might be available for adoption. We are part of the WSU Shelter Medicine Club shelter rotation. So what that means is that the kids that are in that club that are vet students come into the shelter and learn from us about shelter medicine. So veterinary medicine is a lot different if your animal's in your home compared to if it's in a shelter. And a lot of those students, surprisingly enough, don't even know how to trim a cat's nails, don't know how to hold a cat during an exam or a dog, and so they come in and they learn those things from us. So hopefully giving them more of a rounded education. We provide placement services for people in the community who can no longer take care of their animals through petfinder.com, and we hope that we can get them new homes before they have to actually come into the facility to stay at the shelter. We offer obedience training on a limited basis because our trainer does donate her time, and also since the fairgrounds is also donated to us, unfortunately, we do get bumped if there are paid clients. And so it's kind of, we usually offer classes once a year, at least a beginning and a intermediate class. We have a spay and neuter assistance program, which is $50 off of a spay and $30 off of a neuter, which is good for all Latah County residents, and they can get that coupon from us and take it into the vet clinic, and then we end up paying the difference there, so hopefully encouraging more people to get their animals fixed. We have a program called the Palouse Pitbull Project, which is focused specifically on people in the area that do own power breeds to get them spayed and neutered, and also to get them obedience training so they're aware of how they need to take care of their animal in a more positive fashion, and also encouraging microchipping with that so we can make sure that those animals, if they go to missing, can go back to their owner. And we also offer a community feeding program similar to a food bank. If we have excess food on hand at the facility, we do provide that for people in the community who may need help during a certain time of month. And usually we have about 30 people who take advantage of that every month. We have 5 major fundraisers each year. We do a Paw Loose 5K walk and run, which is in June. We participate in Renaissance Fair. We have Howling at Hamilton, which is with the Parks and Rec Department, and the dogs get to have the pool the day after it closes, and it's just a fun time for everybody. Right now, we're having our Christmas raffle out at the mall, which is a fundraiser that's been going on since the shelter started in the late 70s. And we also participate in the alternative giving market. So I think that's the biggest, everything I have. Oh, the only other thing I wanted to add is that there's sometimes some confusion between a no-kill and a never-kill shelter. And I just want to make sure that everybody knows a no-kill shelter is a shelter that doesn't euthanize dependent upon space, or if an animal has a treatable disease, or the length of time that an animal's been at the facility. A never-kill shelter would never euthanize anything. They'll treat them until the animal is literally not able to survive anymore, or they don't euthanize animals that are aggressive and cannot be returned back to public. We are not that type of shelter. We're a no-kill shelter, which means that we are euthanizing. It's just on a very limited basis.
Thank you, Lori. That's an excellent report. It's nice to know we have such talent and dedication in our community. Looks like a little teeny building for all the things that you have going on. And I'm wondering about the census, the coverage. We heard Chief Duke mention $500 from the county in terms of the number of animals that are brought in and housed in the shelter on a regular, over the course of some regular interval. Are we keeping up, or should we be having a conversation about, how much all of our parties, including the city, contribute to the Humane Society of the Palouse?
Do I just, I don't, you want to? I did, yeah, I figured you, I wanted to, I did provide the information that we, as the Humane Society of the Palouse, do go to the county commissioners each year separately from what the city of Moscow does. And we do request funding from them as the Humane Society of the Palouse. So each year we get a stipend from them. We had gotten up to $23,000 at one point that they paid to the Humane Society of the Palouse to take in animals from Latah County. In the past 5 years, they have slowly decreased that money. Last year we got $17,000. This year they went down to $15,000. And as you can tell, the amount of animals that come in from the county is not that different from the amount of animals that come in from the city. You can tell that dog and cat expenses are pretty similar, especially dogs. It's actually skewed to more money goes to county dogs. Number one reason being is a majority of the dogs that come in from Latah County stay at the Humane Society. They don't go back to their owners. And if they do go back to their owners, you're looking at an area of like mile radius around the city. So, an animal comes in from Robinson Park Road or just south of town or just north of town, then we see those animals go home. Animal comes in from Potlatch, Deary, Kendrick, and Julietta, surprisingly enough, come up to Moscow. Those animals tend to not go back to their owners, and so that's why we have more money that goes into county dogs than we do city dogs. Also, another thing is that animals that come in from Latah County generally tend to be in poorer health and require more medical attention before they can be adopted out, and so that also adds to the expense. With the disposition of dogs here, you can see that a majority of the dogs that, like I said, that come from Latah County stay at the Humane Society. Majority of dogs that come in from the city of Moscow do go back to their owners. So even though our source of dog intake, 75% of it is the city, majority of those dogs are going home.
Is that because of licensing? Are we?
Not necessarily.
You'd like to be able to say so, right?
I would
So
love
we.
to say
Yeah,
it's because
us
of
too.
licensing. Unfortunately,
too.
no. We have, we do keep extensive lists of missing animal reports. We do keep those lists for a whole year because you never know when you're going to get an animal in. Microchipping is definitely the best way to go if people actually keep their microchip information updated. But a majority of the reason why the animals go back to their owners is because, one, they're frequent flyers, so we know who owns them, or two, the people do call looking for their pet. So.
Okay.